We all know the case of the McCloskeys in St. Louis. It turned into a major national news story. Husband and wife, the McCloskeys, outside of their property in St. Louis with lawfully owned firearms, telling the mob or just showing the mob that they were willing to defend themselves even after threats against their lives and their property. Well, now we have the prosecutor in St. Louis bringing a felony charge, which clearly is sending a message to other people who might defend their property all across the country, defend themselves. But she's not the only one who gets a say in this. We're very pleased to be joined now by the Missouri Attorney General from the state of Missouri, Attorney General Eric Schmitt. Mr. Schmitt, thank you so much. We appreciate you calling in.
Great to be with you.
So can you just tell us, where does the case stand right now? Charges have been brought. Walk us through what the charges really are, what the allegation is, and what the McCloskeys face.
Sure. So earlier this week, local prosecutor Kim Gardner, who has jurisdiction over state charges, essentially in that jurisdiction, the city of St. Louis, filed criminal charges against both the McCloskeys. And essentially the charges are an unlawful use of a weapon, which means they're brandishing a deadly weapon in a threatening manner. The problem Kim Gardner has with those charges is that the case should have never been brought because of Missouri's Castle Doctrine. And just to kind of take a step back and you look at Missouri law, first of all, the fundamental right of self-defense is well established. It really predates our Constitution. It's a natural right. The founders knew that, which is why the Second Amendment is in the Bill of Rights. In Missouri, in our first Constitution, 1820, that was incorporated in, and every other Constitution we've had, and as recently as 2014, Missouri voters overwhelmingly expanded those Second Amendment rights. And the creature of statute at issue here is the Castle Doctrine. And Missouri has perhaps the most expansive Castle Doctrine in the country. It means that, if you're being threatened, as the McCloskeys, say they were here, you have a right to not only defend your life and anyone else's life, your family members' lives, but also not just your home, your castle, but your property. And so, given those facts, the statutes are very clear that it's not even an affirmative defense to the unlawful use of a weapon charge. It means it's not a crime at all if you're fall under the Castle Doctrine, which is clear here. So, look, this is nothing more than a political prosecution. And in a time where you have, calls to defund the police and rising violent crime rates across the country, including in St. Louis, which recorded has well over 130 murders already this year, a 75% increase this July versus last July. This local prosecutor has released inmates charged with violent crimes using COVID as an excuse for people who were, charged with violent crimes to target law-abiding citizens for exercising their fundamental right of self-defense is outrageous, which is why I felt like I needed to stand up, do something. We've entered the case and asked for the court to dismiss the charges.
Right. Let's jump into that part of this now. We're speaking to the Attorney General for the state of Missouri, Eric Schmitt, and about this McCloskey case where the local attorney for St. Louis has brought a charge here, a felony charge of unlawful brandishing of weapons. Okay, you are weighing in on this as the Attorney General for the state. What is your position? What are the mechanisms at your disposal, and what's happening right now?
Sure. So the McCloskeys have their own counsel, and they'll be defending the McCloskeys. But I'm coming in as the Attorney General on behalf of all Missourians because I'm constitutionally charged with not only protecting the Constitution, but when there's an issue that affects all Missourians, like this would, I have a right to come into a case. And what we're alleging here is that if you have a situation where law-abiding citizens are exercising a fundamental right, the right to self-defense, and they're being criminally prosecuted for that. If you think about that, the government wants to come in and put you in jail for 4 years, up to 4 years, if you're exercising that right. That could have a chilling effect on these constitutionally protected right of self-defense that all Missourians enjoy. So the specter of this case, in its pendency at any point in time, sends a very clear message to law-abiding citizens that you exercise that right of self-defense at your own peril. And if this prosecutor wants to come in and put you in jail, that's what she's going to do. And so, that's why we're coming in to assert that you can't move forward with a prosecution like this that has no basis in law. It's a political prosecution. It could have a chilling effect on others exercising their constitutional rights as well.
Now, why do you think that the prosecutor Gardner And we would call it a district attorney here. She's the state's attorney for St. Louis, right? So why would she offer in that initial statement, why bring a felony charge, but even say in the statement, we're open to deferred prosecution for this as well? Is this a prosecutor's gambit to essentially just get an admission of wrongdoing, show what side she's on, and then not actually bring this to trial? Why do that? I mean, that seems a little bit, that seemed to be quite a noteworthy addition to her initial statement.
It's a telling comment, isn't it? It sort of indicates that maybe she doesn't believe this is even a crime in the first place, which it's not. I mean, the statutes in Missouri are very clear that the unlawful use of a weapon charge isn't a crime if you're, fall under the Castle Doctrine, if you're defending yourself, as the McCloskeys were in this case. So it has no basis. It's, purely a political prosecution. She has a primary in 2 weeks for her seat, which also enters sort of the equation here. And while literally, dozens and dozens and dozens of homicides go uncharged in St. Louis, this case got to the top of the stack. Is again, it reeks of politics. And look, the reality is people who run for office make statements all the time. The difference here is this is a prosecutor that's bringing criminal charges against law-abiding citizens, potentially putting them in jail. She said what she said, but it comes with a 4-year prison sentence potentially. That's a very, very dangerous road to go down. Is
it possible, and we're speaking to Eric Schmidt, who is the Attorney General for the state of Missouri, everyone, is it possible if this goes forward and the McCloskeys they're lawyers and they're represented by lawyers, if they take this to trial and were to lose, the governor could pardon them, correct, under Missouri law?
Correct. Although the point has been made recently that, the governor is up for election this fall. And so, look, none of these things are certain, which is why we felt, and I'm glad the governor has,
and that's Governor Mike Parson, right? He is a Republican, but he's up for re-election, as he said.
Correct. And he's made that statement, and I think it's good that he's, weighed in here. But the truth is, my job is to try to nip this thing in the bud, because as this thing moves forward, as we allege in our brief, the specter or the idea that this, in a very highly publicized case, that someone exercising their fundamental right of self-defense can be prosecuted for that, has a chilling effect on others. And that's a legitimate state interest for us to be in the case.
What do you think needs to be done? I want to pivot a little bit to another component of law enforcement in your state. St. Louis really got on the national radar when it comes to crime and violent crime because of the Mike Brown incident, which led to the Black Lives Matter movement, and we know there was a lot of violence and rioting in neighborhoods of, I believe it was East St. Louis. What do you think? I mean, if you're continuing to work with state law enforcement authorities, what could be done to bring that murder rate down in St. Louis? And are you open to working more closely with federal law enforcement agencies, as President Trump has been pushing for in recent weeks?
It's a great question. And I think the truth of the matter is criminals have been emboldened for a variety of reasons. If you want to take it from a prosecutor's perspective, a local prosecutor, if they don't believe that there are any consequences to their actions. I mean, the city of St. Louis, there's over 360 carjackings every year. That's one a day, a carjacking where someone's being terrorized and maybe killed in the process, and a grandfather who's lived in a neighborhood his whole life, having to go through that. You've got children being killed, mothers and fathers lost. It's reached, epidemic-like levels. And if a prosecutor doesn't show a willingness to take on violent crime and be serious about it, it's going to embolden criminals. And that's sort of what we're seeing. From my perspective as Attorney General, we actually, in Kansas City, Operation Legend is moving forward. The governor had spoken to the president about this, and the Attorney General, William Barr, has authorized federal law enforcement officers to work on violent crime in the Kansas City area. Kansas City has over 100 murders this year. It's on pace for a record number this year. So you're seeing this across the country, and Missouri is, no different. So I think that level of cooperation is important. From my perspective as AG, very early on in my term, I reached out to the U.S. Attorney in both the St. Louis area and the Kansas City area. And we've done something very unique here, Buck. We have unprecedented level of cooperation. We have lawyers, because we don't the local prosecutors don't really ask us to help in prosecuting violent crime. I guess because we have a bit of a different worldview. We work with those U.S. attorneys. So I have lawyers from my office who've been cross-deputized as assistant U.S. attorneys, so they can help prosecute violent crime in federal court, where the penalties are often stiffer, and we've got some cooperation with those U.S. attorneys. So, we've had well over a couple hundred of charges and indictments from that.
Can I ask you about that, because I've been trying
Sure.
to, and we're speaking to. Sorry, Mr. Attorney General of Missouri. I'm getting so much worthwhile information here that I'm bouncing around a little bit. But I've been telling folks from when I worked at the NYPD Intelligence Division on loan from the CIA, which is a federal intelligence organization everybody knows. But when I was at the NYPD on loan from the CIA in what was called a HIDA, high-intensity drug trafficking area, that was set up with DEA, FBI, Customs and Border, you name it. We had U.S. Marshals, everybody co-located and working together on different issues. So when I hear all this pushback on exactly what you're talking about, they say, well, the federal government doesn't have a role in these kinds of crimes. Just give people a sense of when you have cross-deputized people from your state attorney's general office with these other federal agencies, what are the kind of crimes that come under their purview? Because I think people think, federal crime, it must be, major drug trafficking, terrorism. There's a lot more than that, isn't there?
There are. I mean, I will tell you a lot of because you're on, exactly on point here. Jurisdictionally, things are different, and the state, is generally prosecuting homicides and things like that. But the feds can go after carjackings, and so we work on those kinds of cases. We also have, I'll tell you, the lion's share of felon in possession of firearms, and you get people who are causing a lot of problems in neighborhoods. You get them off the streets, and so that's been a lion's share of the prosecutions, and so. We felt like it was an important partnership to have, that this is an all hands on deck moment, that these sort of turf battles that maybe get fought other places, there's no room for that right now. I mean, you've got spiking violent crime rates, and you look and you see what's happening on the news every night, just this lawlessness. It's not good. People have a right to be safe, and people are being terrorized in their communities. And it's wrong. So I think we all need to kind of put all those things aside and work together. So on one hand, we're working as closely as we possibly can. I think Missouri's partnership with you at the U.S. Attorney's Office and all those federal agencies you mentioned, the FBI, DEA, U.S. Marshals, that's a great level of cooperation. What we're not seeing is these local prosecutors, sometimes like Kim Gardner, they're not interested in that. They have their own agenda. They're not interested in prosecuting violent crime. And so we kind of have to work around that.
Eric Schmidt, Attorney General of Missouri. Sir, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise, and good luck to you.
Thank you, Buck. Good to be with you.
I can't believe we're being evicted from our home that we didn't sell. That's what Deborah said when she found out she was the victim of home title fraud, which is a crime that can cost you your home. Title fraud is not covered by insurance or identity theft services. The only trusted folks to protect your home are at Home Title Lock. Your home's legal titles online where cyber thieves find it and forge your signature stating you sold your home to them. In Deborah's case, she didn't know she was a victim until the eviction notice arrived. Home Title Lock puts a virtual barrier around your home's title. If tampering is detected, they instantly mobilize to stop it. So go to HomeTitleLock.com today and register your address to see if you're a victim and don't know it. Use code BUCK for 30 free days of protection. That's code BUCK. Go to HomeTitleLock.com. Again, protect your home from home title theft by going to HomeTitleLock.com. Use code BUCK for 30 free days of protection.
A permanent shutdown was really never an option in terms of what we're doing right now. This would be completely unsustainable, produce debilitating economic fallback, and lead to catastrophic public health consequences. There are consequences to shutdowns, and we've saved potentially millions of lives by doing the initial shutdown, but now we're very aware of this disease. We understand the disease to a large extent. Nobody's going to maybe ever fully understand it, but we'll end up with a cure, we'll end up with therapeutics, we'll end up with a vaccine very soon, all three. We're instead asking Americans to use masks, socially distance, and employ vigorous hygiene. Wash your hands every chance you get while sheltering high-risk populations. We are imploring young Americans to avoid packed bars and other crowded indoor gatherings. Be safe.
The president gave a COVID press conference, right? He's back to doing these briefings. I don't know how long he's going to continue them. I'm very happy that he did, because he established some really important context for all the discussions we're having about what do we do now? Where are we now? You know, I just checked the CDC website. Here we are. It's been almost 3 weeks since I last talked to you about this. And I said, I told you that if it turned out that there was a huge spike in deaths, similar to what we saw in the March, April timeframe, I would come on the show and I would tell you, okay, you know, I must have missed something, or we got to revisit what's going on here, or well, we had, in the last 24 hours, the CDC recorded 57,777 cases, 473 new deaths. Now, that's a lot of people dying from a disease right now. I get that. But it is nowhere near where we were. It's down 75%. This is what the president said at his briefing, down 75%. And we've had all of these states that are reopened, and you still have a death rate that's down 75%. Why is that? Right? We're being told, oh, no, it's because we didn't, all this bad stuff is happening because we didn't mask up enough. We didn't wear enough masks. Oh, well, you know, it turns out the president, before I even get into the mask issue, the president's even saying now, he's like, look, you know, if you can, right circumstances, wear a mask. Play clip 2.
We're asking everybody that when you are not able to socially distance, wear a mask, get a mask. Whether you like the mask or not, they have an impact, they'll have an effect, and we need everything we can get.
Say, whether you like it or not, it'll have an impact. I'm not as certain as the president is that it will have an impact, but I've got masks. I've got them by my front door. I've got rubber gloves. I've got a mask. You know, I'm trying to play by the rules here as much as I can, and I really do it because in New York, everyone's so, and I don't do it outside, so that's a non-starter. I'm not wearing a mask outside unless I'm trying to sneak into some of the BLM protests and not have them punch me in the face. Then a mask is great. But I don't wear a mask outside. I wear a mask when I go indoors to places or when I'm around other people who are going to be freaked out, which in New York, if you don't wear a mask right now in New York, people look at you like you're walking around, you know, naked, smothered in grape jelly or something. I mean, they look at you like, what the heck are you doing? It is, you know, New York is like mask central. You got to wear a mask or else people. I don't do it outside. And to that, I just say, I'm within the guidance the president's saying. If you can't socially distance, so I socially distance. No one is going to, first of all, I don't have the virus. Okay. Second of all, no one's going to get the virus from walking past me outside in open air. If they could, we would have had an infection rate that was, you know, 90% of the country. Anybody who had gone outside would already have this thing in the last 6 months. Anybody. Okay. You can't get the virus that way. We know you're not going to get the virus that way. So now we should look at how do people get this virus? And I've talked to you about intrafamilial and nosocomial. Fun word to use. People go, nosocomial, what is that? Nosocomial means intra-hospital transmission. And remember that hospital acquired infections kill an average of 80 to 100,000 people a year in the United States, every year. That's before the pandemic. So you want to be really careful in hospitals. You have a lot of people with compromised immune systems and obviously a concentration of a lot of diseases, which is why, again, when Trump went to Walter Reed wearing a mask, I get it. You know, there are places where additional precautions make sense. But Trump is not this, you know, anti-mask zealot the left pretends he is. But it doesn't matter what the truth is. We all know what the agenda is, folks.
Provide an update on our response to the China virus and what my administration is doing to get the outbreak in the Sun Belt under control. Seems largely in Sun Belt, but could be spreading.
All Trump has to do is remind people that this virus originated in China and that the global spread of it is due in no small part to the dishonesty, the cover-up, the recklessness of the Chinese Communist Party. All he has to do is bring that up, which is just a fact. and liberals lose their minds, right? Why is that? Well, shouldn't we all be united against the Chinese Communist Party? Is has put 1 million Uyghurs in concentration camps. The Chinese Communist Party is engaged in the greatest theft of trade secrets, intellectual property, and with that wealth, right? We are increasing an information economy. Info is wealth. They are stealing from the rest of the world, most notably from us, constantly. They run an oppressive totalitarian regime. They do not allow free speech. They do not care about human rights. And somehow we can't even count on libs to be united with their fellow Americans, us, against China. No, they don't want it to be blamed on China. They want the whole COVID situation to be placed at the foot of the White House and on Donald Trump's shoulders, more specifically. It's all his fault because they think that is the single greatest way to advocate for Joe Biden to become the next president of the United States. That's what they really, truly believe. That is what their thought process is on all of this stuff. And Nancy Pelosi makes this explicit.
The president says it's a Trump. Let's call it the Trump virus.
She calls it the friggin' Trump virus. Play clip 10.
Well, I think with the president's comments today, he recognized the mistakes that he has made by now embracing mask wearing and the recognition this is not a hoax. It is a pandemic that has gotten worse before it will get better because it is in action. And in fact, clearly, it is the Trump virus.
The Trump virus.
That's what she calls it. I think we should call it the Pelosi virus because the stupidity, the political stupidity that has gripped this nation now, that does not have a realistic view of the COVID-19 pandemic, that supports these idiot protesters running all over the streets, throwing rocks at cops and all this. That's a virus of the brain. We could perhaps call that brain virus, also known as Trump derangement syndrome, the Pelosi virus. Right? The Pelosi virus. I think that's a fair way to describe it. And what is if I'm going to diagnose the Pelosi virus, it is to be a lib who sees the world through this bizarre lens of everything is Trump's fault and everything going wrong would be made better if you put the quasi, let's just say too old for the job Joe Biden in the role of commander-in-chief, the most powerful job in the world. And cops aren't the good guys. Cops are the bad guys. I mean, you go down the whole list. You know, we need a Green New Deal. We need more socialism. That's the Pelosi virus. It's a brain virus. It takes over your mind. And it doesn't make anything better. In fact, it makes everything markedly worse. But as I've been saying, and as you know, the single most important takeaway that the Democrats want anyone to have during all of this is the blame, the mountains of blame that they are putting on top of the Trump administration with this, even though, as we know, it is the China virus and it comes from China and it is hurting the entire world. And the U.S. response to this has not been that bad. If you took New York and New Jersey out of the equation, the U.S. response to this virus has been incredible, actually. It's two Democrat states, one of which I am currently sitting in, that are the reason that we've had a response to this virus that isn't much better than effectively all of the major, meaning large European countries. You know, Germany might be on a per capita basis right alongside us, but we would be far better than Italy, France, Germany, the UK, you name it. If it wasn't for New York and New Jersey, which got hit so badly in the early days of this. I am frustrated right now because I think what's going to happen is now Trump has relented a bit and said, look, wear masks under certain circumstances and certain times. And they're going to take that as, it's such a big backtracking and look what he's doing now. We're seeing the curve is already bending in these states, and has nothing to do with enhanced restrictions and lockdowns. The curve is bending downward because this is what happens with this virus. The susceptible population gets infected quickly. If younger, healthier people get infected, they clear the virus. As long as you can protect people with compromised immune systems and in the high-risk age group, you will have a relatively low mortality, even with a very high degree of spread. This was always, look, Sweden did this. And Sweden never locked down, as we know. You could always go to restaurants. You could always go to cafes. Sweden took this approach, and they are in the middle of the pack in Europe, and that includes countries where mask wearing became a religion and lockdown became extreme. You know, I'm seeing there's a spike. Australia has had very severe COVID-19 lockdown at different points, and Australia is now having a surge in cases, right? I mean, this just... We like to believe that we can control this, or some people like to believe that we can control this, and at the end of the day, we can't. We can try to manage the flow, but we cannot stop the disease in its tracks with our actions. That is a lie. It's a lie. It's just not true. And then that brings me also to the fight over schools. The fact that Democrats are in favor of keeping kids out of schools is the clearest example we've had of the politicization of this issue, the removal of science from the equation, and the enhancement of politics as the primary method of making a determination since we had the Black Lives Matter protests out in the streets, and we were being told by public health authorities who had been very vocal for months about how we all need to lock down and social distance. Well, but this is like really important because we like have to defeat racism. So it's like really important we do this right now, even if it means people spread the virus. Because racism is totally going to be defeated by these yelling, shrieking morons gathered by the thousands all over the country, right? That's really going to make everything better. So now we have the school issue where, once again, there's no science-based argument here. The argument is really just a question of what's going to be politically damaging for Republicans, for Trump, and what do Democrats think they can get away with? I mean, here's the mayor of New York, the largest school system in the country. Public school system is, of course, in New York. Here's the mayor saying that he's got a clear schedule in mind for when we can go back to 5-day-a-week schools. Play clip 8.
75% of New York City public school parents want their kids back in school. They agree with your point that you're going to learn much better in school, that the kids need that for their development and their future. Everyone cares about safety and health. So the way I look at it is, look, right now, New York City has had extraordinary success after going through hell in March and April. The people of the city really fought back against this disease. They've been very disciplined. The face coverings, the social distancing, we've been really tough in the restrictions we've had in place. And now consistently our health indicators show that we would be in a position to open up school. But we're going to make that judgment when we get right up on the beginning of school in September. That's when we'll make the final decision. The day we get to the vaccine is the day that we'll really go to full 5-day-a-week normal instruction in our schools.
This is exactly what we were told and what we believe there was agreement on from the beginning. We were told that there would not be a lockdown until vaccine approach to this virus. That's what we were led to believe. And now you have people like de Blasio straight up saying school lockdown, or at least real school, does not happen again until there's a vaccine. They're saying it out loud now. Now it's all, oh no, we have to keep doing this until there's a vaccine. Still can't go to the gym in New York. Still can't dine indoors in New York, as well as a lot of other places. I know that Texas, Florida, Arizona, California, those of you listening in those states, you got your own problem. Georgia, you got a rough situation happening in all those states now with COVID-19, with the restrictions, as well as from the surge in cases. Although we're not seeing the big surge. Why aren't we seeing the big? And I have a theory that I keep promoting to you as to why we don't see a big surge in fatalities from the virus. What does the left say? Oh, we didn't mask enough? Well, hold on. We have all these new cases. Why hasn't the mortality rate spiked? Well, I've told you it's because younger, healthier people who clear the virus are getting this, and there's also greater immunity in the population than people initially realized. And as long as we're protecting seniors and people who are at risk, you're going to have low mortality even with high spread. what do Democrats say? Lock it down. Wear a mask. That'll save us all. Really won't, but they say this anyway. Even though Dr. Fauci, we haven't heard from the Fauci today. Where is the Fauci? Oh, Fauci, wherefore art thou, Fauci? I know wherefore means why, not where, but what doesn't matter. Here's the Fauci, for those of you who missed him, saying, look, we got to get the kids back into school. You got to, take those little kids. You got to say, hey, wash your hands. Keep a distance. No, don't rub your nose and touch somebody else with it or whatever. That's gross, unsanitary. Also could spread a virus. You don't want to do that. Use a tissue. Don't be a little barbarian. Here's the Fauci. Play clip 9.
In general, when I think about that, I want to take a 40,000-foot look and say, as a fundamental principle, I do agree that we should try as best as we possibly can to get the children back to school because of the well-documented, secondary, downstream ripple effects that are negative, particularly on parents and on the children when you keep them out of school.
Got to get the kids back to school. That's right. We do have to get the kids back to school. We really do. We've got to get them back into school. But Democrats want to slow roll it. Why? We all know why. We all know what's going on here. We all understand what the stakes are.
And that's why Pelosi saying what she's been saying. It's just a Trump virus. And Trump is Trump is the reason everyone's dying.
That's what she says. That's what she says. She actually blames him for death. Pelosi is blaming the president for causing death. Play 10.
Well, I think with the president's comments today, he recognized the mistakes that he has made by now embracing mask wearing, and the recognition this is not a hoax. It is a pandemic that has gotten worse before it will get better because of his inaction, and in fact, clearly, it is the Trump virus.
The Trump virus.
No, I think we should call it the Pelosi virus. I don't think we should let Chardonnay socialist Nancy get away with this nonsense. Enough is enough.
Look, we'll see where this ends up. We still don't know the details of this initial proposal, but as it's written right now, I'm not only a no, I'm a hell no. And sadly, I think this is envisioned as an opening gambit. Everyone expects the Democrats to come back with a huge wish list of spending. And this is the swamp in a feeding frenzy. Everybody's lobbyist has their hand out saying, well, look, if you're spending trillions of dollars, I want to get some. And it's not right. It is when we've got over 20% of the working population in this country sitting at home without a job. Our focus should be on just 6 months ago, we were in an historic economic boom. We had the lowest unemployment in 50 years. And due to this pandemic that escaped from communist China due to their cover-up, 40 million Americans are hurting right now. We need to have our priority getting them back to work and getting them able to provide for their families.
Ted Cruz is right. We got to stop this Uncle Sam just writes everybody checks mentality. We got to get everybody up and going and working again. I mean, I haven't taken a day off. And look, I'm fortunate to have a job, and I get that, and I am thankful for it. But I mean, there are people who have been continuing on with their work every day. I mean, I haven't taken a day off since the pandemic started. And I'm looking around and I'm thinking there are a lot of people that have continued, essential workers, a lot of people that have continued doing what they do, or they're working from home and they're even more comfortable. They like it even more. It's even better for them. But regardless, we got to get back to work as a country. This has to happen. We cannot sustain what's going on right now with the trillions and trillions of dollars that we're spending. If it were possible, I just would tell you to work through this thought experiment with me. If it were possible to do this, why wouldn't we just have everyone stay home and the government just keeps writing checks? The government just keeps sending you and why make it only $600 of unemployment insurance? Why not a $1,000? Right? Why not $1,000? Why not 10 grand? I mean, as much as producer Mark even loves this show, if he could stay home, well, he's already home, but if he could stay home and not do any work and make 10 grand a week, I would have to really ask him very, very nicely to keep doing his job anyway. That would be hard.
I would do whatever I could to make you fire me.
There you go. I mean, look, 10 grand a week's a lot of money, buddy. You know what I mean? I wouldn't even be able to be mad at you. So, you know, at some point we understand that there's a clear limit to what we can spend, and that there are downsides to this, and there are consequences to this. It's not just, oh, we do this and everything is going to be fine. So I think that's very important for everyone to see. Ted Cruz understands this, and we've got to get back to work. And he also said in a soundbite very similar to this, that we all know, right, that after, this is what we're all saying on the right, everyone who's paying attention. The problems get much less if Biden wins the day after he wins. Then we can have then you'll see the beginnings of some reasonableness, not entirely, some reasonableness when it comes to the economy and spending and getting people back to work. Oh, and then a whole lot of socialism as well. But at least they'll say, yeah, we can beat this virus. We'll be able to defeat this thing together now that old man Biden's calling the shots, which is a terrifying thought.